It's time to talk about crime and punishment, and let's begin right off the bat um, with three of the major concepts that I may or may not cover very well elsewhere. Mens rea, that is the actus reus, the thinking, I had this in my mind that I was going to do it. I intended to do what I did. I may not have intended every foreseeable outcome, but by going into something, I knew I did it. Generally, it also has kind of a criminal element. I knew it was wrong, although we don't have to necessarily prove that they knew it was wrong. You know, we do have some of that knew or should have known standard still in there. And the last is the standard of proof. That is, we have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil case, we only have to prove that the set of facts for whichever prevailing party are more probably true than not true. So if we look at the scales of justice, we put a feather on one side or the other and they prevail. Well, it needs a lot more than that. We have to have no reasonable doubt. That we have to prove that they are guilty of this and that we followed all of these elements. Every last one of them is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Not beyond any doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. And again, in the law, we don't always define that. So looking at mens rea, we're looking at intent. We knew or should have known that the action that we came up with was likely to result in death or severe bodily harm. I knew that taking the money out of the cash register was wrong. Okay? Now, if we're looking inside a murder or most other offenses, we oftentimes have what we call lesser included offenses, such as murder in the second degree or manslaughter. We can have voluntary or involuntary. Involuntary manslaughter, oftentimes we're looking at somebody who is under the influence of a substance. They really no longer control their actions completely. Voluntary manslaughter is kind of a gross negligence oftentimes. You know, I was driving a car the wrong way and this kid darted out in front of me, but I was going too fast and too fast for conditions, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to charge this person with capital murder where we may take their life, but we do want to charge them with manslaughter. So I'm just giving you murder as a standard. Most of us understand murder a little bit, but killing another one, taking another person's life without legal justification. Because self-defense, if we can prove it, is a legal justification. Well, they were coming at me and I didn't see any way out. They had that gun to my temple and, I was able to get the knife they were holding and stick it in them or whatever. Anyway, mens rea is that we actually had that in our brain. I'm trusting in my doggies. I've got a guy helping me out here. Let's look at assault and battery. So I think this is some video game that I pulled this off of. I don't have any attribution. Pretty bad. Assault and battery, and I think we need to always note this, that a lot of this follows the negligence stuff. We could be both criminally liable and civilly liable. We may do time for this, or, the individual we're talking about might do time for this, or we might be civilly liable. And we're going to use the same standards, least non-consensual touching. Generally, criminal battery is more like this, where we're beating the heck out of one another rather than a little tiny touch. Most prosecutors aren't going to go that. It's like, wait a minute, there's so many excuses we can't prove mens rea. But, if I'm sitting there with fisticuffs and trying to hurt you, it's pretty easy to prove it. Now, here we've got two people who are willingly battering one another, if you will. So that's more of a common, that's Pacquiao. So this has to be a video of some kind. I love this guy's tattoos. I'm not a big tattoo fan, but he's pretty well tattooed. Looks like Pacquiao's rocking him up pretty good. Assault is, again, putting somebody in fear of imminent harm. Having a gun to somebody's head is definitely an assault. And we have to prove that mens rea. And maybe we're going to prove that by surrounding circumstances. Ordinarily, in an American criminal prosecution, the defendant doesn't take the stand. And they've got the right to just say, no, I don't have to prove innocence. They have to prove guilt. So it's really hard to get the defendant to admit, oh, yeah, I did that and I meant to kill him. It's not going to happen. Some of the stuff that businesses need to worry about a lot. Let me back up one. Assault and battery can get us into some trouble in retail and maybe in delivery too. As we're getting close to contact with people, we got to train our workers that, here's what assault and battery constitutes. This class, I'm not going to sit here and give you great examples. That's going to be more job specific, but know that, the least touching of someone in a commercial setting, they haven't necessarily consented to be touched. One of the big issues we do find a lot of in businesses is potential for mail or wire fraud. And the internet has expanded this tremendously. The fact that what you were using can go interstate may give the federal government prosecution power. The state government would also have prosecution power, and it's become fairly well settled that even though the crimes are similar, you can be two-tracked through a federal prosecution and a state prosecution. The Patriot Act has been toyed with and reconstituted, but you need to know that it's out there. Anytime you're handling money, be careful that you may or may not have a Patriot Act proposition. One of the things that it does, the Patriot Act, is you can't have cash withdrawals in amounts excess of $5,000 and not have them reported to the federal government. They're trying to track stuff, and so they set this number kind of low because that means you may have to have a whole bunch of transactions. If we're seeing a whole bunch of $4,999 transactions single day, I would say bank maybe should really look at, is this an aggregation? Maybe we need to report this. Money laundering. One of the things that a lot of criminal enterprises do is they set up a legitimate enterprise, a dry cleaner, even a tavern, grocery store, places that handle a lot of cash and don't necessarily account for it very well. It's a way for us to maybe drop cash in from our drug selling business and kind of drop it into this drawer, and that way we give it some legitimacy. It comes in as that's legitimate. I don't think most of my students are real interested in how to money launder. B.B. Rebozo was real good at it, apparently. But, we've always got to worry about looking out for, is this going on in my place of business? It's potential. We've got a guy who's selling smack on the street who's running our bar for us, and they're actually laundering money through, is saying, oh, no, this came out of my tip jar and blah, 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 blah. And maybe spreading it out as largesse. We've got to be careful as we're watching this. Are we, and bars are oftentimes great places to sell drugs. So, we may, unbeknownst to us, know this stuff's going on. One of the things we need to worry about is conspiracy law. It used to be that we had to have a really kind of overt act to be guilty of conspiracy, but as things have become more sophisticated, that has begun to back down. And while we're getting rid of, in ways, John Stuart Mill's principle that it's better to have 10 innocent people go free than to have one guilty hang, the law on conspiracy has kind of come back where if you knew or should have known that the people around you were engaged in a conspiracy, your keeping quiet about it is a furtherance of the conspiracy. So, you may be an unwitting accomplice, but keep your eyes and ears open. And, maybe the best thing to do is to report, and hopefully the business has some system where you're not guilty of defamation or anything like that, where maybe it can't be traced back to you. Then, of course, the businesses have difficulty there. How do we get it to where we're not, breaking? Well, anyway, let me back up a second. I lost my train of thought. But, how some people abuse systems like that. They're constantly turning somebody else in. How do we screen for that? The other is an anonymous tip is meaningless under the law. That person has the right under the Sixth Amendment to confront their accusers. Okay? Now, here's a big one. This is RICO, and RICO has tremendously expanded. And it is racketeering influenced and corrupt organization is what it's after. It was after the mob, okay? It's trying to get us into this very broad sweep. And RICO investigations can tie up an industry for a long time. They may not really be engaged in anything that looks like RICO, but RICO has really expanded. A lot of prosecutors utilize it as a sideway into looking at corrupt business practices. I'm not going to spend more time on it necessarily than this, but a lot of times they're going to come in and offer plea bargains. When you plea bargain in, then maybe they're going to try to get you to rat somebody else out and squeeze up the ladder. Oftentimes these prosecutions start very low, and they're going to knock on your door as a low-end employee and kind of go, hey, you're not the person that's under investigation here. We just want to talk to you about some stuff that's going on at your workplace. Be very careful here. This is where you shouldn't do. If you're going to cooperate with them, do it with, and maybe you're aware of something that's going on and you're not really part of it, but this may be your opportunity to go, oh boy, I've been wanting to clear my breast of this. Do this only with a lawyer. Assert your Sixth Amendment right to counsel. This way, counsel can potentially plea bargain immunity for you, or some kind of reduced sentence, or some kind of suspended imposition of sentence. If I cop to this, will I get it? And folks, sometimes you're better off taking it. Don't take the felony if you can, but maybe a misdemeanor, depending on how deeply involved you are in this. It can be hard when you're sitting there making that paycheck and it's big money and stuff's going on around you, and wait a minute, what do I do here? Do I go whistleblow? If you've got suspicions like this, get to a lawyer. Try to find a good criminal lawyer in that area. One of the ways to find good criminal lawyers is to go to the court and see who's representing the defendants in certain kind of cases. And sometimes the clerk of court will help you find that. So I'm not sure. This looks like Germans, so I'm not sure what the money drop here is. But, this is Wehrmacht. Who knows why this one's in here. But the other things, let's back up one, I'm sorry. The other things in the Bill of Rights are right to confront accuser, right to call witnesses. Big deal. The defendant has the power to get the state out and have the state bring witnesses in. And if the witnesses don't appear, we can have those witnesses labeled in contempt of court. Pretty powerful. Ordinarily getting somebody in to testify for you, they're going to go, nope, sorry, not going to get involved, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we can compel them to come in to testify. You've got you've got the right to a jury trial. Big deal. In some countries, you've got to have a felony or even a capital offense to get a jury trial. We get one on fairly small stuff here in the U.S. Big deal. So Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment rights. You've also got the Eighth Amendment right against cruel and unusual punishment. You're free from unlawful search and seizure. You know, one of the first things to do is lawyer up and let the lawyers decide. You know, as soon as you're served with a search warrant, you may say, yeah, I'll gladly let you have on the premises. We can stay right here. You can see that I'm not doing anything. I need my lawyer present when it happens. I'm not clear on the law there whether we can actually do that. You know, they may be able to station somebody in the premises to make sure nothing gets taken, but I don't see any reason why you can't insist on the lawyer. So I guess I didn't realize this was my next slide. So I've kind of covered them. Unreasonable search and seizure, that's what the Z stands for. Z is reasonable in most abbreviations. You have the Fifth Amendment. You have a right against self-incrimination, so they can't compel you to testify. If you've been convicted or let go of this charge before, they cannot bring it again. I already talked about the right for compulsory process to issue in witnesses. You have the right to counsel. You have a right to a jury trial. And then in the Eighth Amendment, you get to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. We have to temper this with the idea that, you know, felonies back in early colonial days, you could get either death or transportation, which meant you would be transported off of the island, so to speak. So anyway, that's a very quick summary of criminal prosecution. I think I've covered pretty much everything that most students need to know, and enjoy your day. Talk to you.